Here are the stories shaping the world this morning and why they matter. Tensions around the Strait of Hormuz are rising sharply after the United States launched a third consecutive night of strikes on Iran and moved to impose a 20% fee on cargo passing through the waterway. U.S. Central Command said the strikes targeted Iranian coastal defense systems, missile and drone sites, and maritime capabilities. Washington also said a blockade on Iranian vessels would take effect at 4 p.m. Eastern Time on Tuesday. President Donald Trump said the United States should be reimbursed for protecting ships in the Strait of Hormuz, one of the world's most important routes for oil and gas shipments. Iran rejected any U.S. control over the waterway. Iran's foreign minister said Iran has been and will remain the guardian of the strait, while also saying 20% was too much, and that Iran would be fair. The confrontation follows Iranian Revolutionary Guard statements that the strait would be closed and accusations that Iranian forces struck U.S. bases in Bahrain and Jordan, as well as 2 Emirati tankers traveling through the strait. The United Arab Emirates said an Iranian missile attack on 2 tankers killed 1 Indian crew member and threatened retaliation. India summoned Iran's deputy ambassador after the seafarer's death. Iran's Revolutionary Guard said the tankers had ignored warnings and turned off navigation systems. For ordinary people, the risks are immediate and practical. Any disruption in the strait can affect fuel prices, shipping costs, and the work of crews who move goods across the world. The death of an Indian crew member is also a reminder that, in maritime crises, civilian workers often face the first danger. The diplomatic path remains open, but the new strikes, threats, and fees are making de-escalation more urgent. In Thailand, authorities in Bangkok are investigating possible negligence and safety failures after a fire at a live music venue killed 30 people late Sunday. The fire broke out shortly before midnight at a 1-story music pub. Officials said an electrical short circuit in a ceiling air conditioner may have triggered it, though the investigation is still ongoing. The death toll has risen to 30, and 24 people were reported in critical condition. Thailand's public health minister said injured victims were being treated across 17 hospitals. Survivors described smoke spreading quickly, emergency routes that were difficult to find, and doors that may have been locked or blocked. Many bodies were found in windowless bathrooms near a rear exit, and investigators are examining whether that rear exit could actually be used during evacuation. The venue had undergone a safety inspection in April, which is now central to the inquiry. Bangkok's governor has called for stricter inspection protocols for similar venues. That response matters because safety rules only protect people when they are enforced in real conditions. At night, in crowded spaces with smoke, noise, and panic. For families who lost loved ones, the central question is whether this was preventable. For workers in bars, restaurants, and entertainment venues, the fire also raises concerns about their own safety on the job. Clear exits, unlocked doors, working electrical systems, and visible emergency signage are basic protections. Officials are now under pressure not only to identify the cause, but to ensure that other gathering places do not carry the same risks. In the United States, public health officials are tracking a large outbreak of Cyclosporiasis, a parasitic intestinal illness that has now been reported in 31 states. About 4,000 cases have been reported this summer, and Michigan accounts for the largest share, with more than 2,600 cases. 44 people in Michigan have been hospitalized. Cyclosporiasis is caused by the parasite Cyclospora. It is usually spread through contaminated food or water. Symptoms can include nausea, fatigue, bloating, and watery diarrhea that may last for weeks or even months without proper treatment. The incubation period can range from 2 to 14 days, which makes it harder for investigators to identify exactly what people ate or drank before becoming sick. Officials have not yet identified the precise source of the outbreak. That uncertainty can be frustrating for families, schools, restaurants, grocery workers, and health departments trying to reduce risk while avoiding unnecessary alarm. The practical advice remains straightforward. People with diarrhea lasting more than 2 or 3 days should talk to a doctor, get tested, and seek treatment. Dr. Omar Awan has emphasized that testing is important because cyclosporiasis can be treated, but it may not be recognized without asking the right questions. Foodborne and waterborne outbreaks also highlight the importance of public health infrastructure. Tracking cases across states takes coordination, laboratories, reporting systems, and local health workers. The faster the source is found, the faster families can protect themselves, and businesses can correct problems without broad confusion or blame. In France, firefighters are battling major forest fires near Fontainebleau, about 70 kilometers south of Paris, after more than 2,000 hectares burned. More than 600 firefighters have been involved in the response, with water-dropping planes, helicopters, and 2 army bulldozers used or being added to the effort. Authorities are investigating whether the fires were deliberately set because several blazes broke out near each other. French media reported that 3 people were in custody. Officials have not yet given final conclusions, and the firefighting operation remains the priority. Crews have been working in windy and very dry conditions after 2 heat waves. One firefighter said some of the fire was burning under leaf mold, which means aircraft alone cannot finish the job. Ground crews still have to dig, cut, clear, and search for hidden hotspots. That kind of work is slow and dangerous, especially in dry forests where wind can shift conditions quickly. The Fontainebleau forest is an important natural area and a familiar place for residents, hikers, climbers, and families from the Paris region. The fires are not only an environmental loss, they also disrupt local life and tourism, and they place strain on emergency workers who are facing longer and more intense fire seasons. There has also been a constructive local response. Residents and local bakeries have brought water and food to firefighters. That kind of support does not replace climate planning, forest management, and prevention, but it shows how communities can help protect the people doing the hardest work in a crisis. In Paris, President Emmanuel Macron presided over his final Bastille Day military parade as French president, with a strong emphasis on rearmament and European strategic autonomy. More than 6,000 troops took part, with one report placing the number at 6,700. The parade included French troops, military equipment, aircraft, and drones. More than 500 troops from what is known as the Coalition of the Willing also participated. Countries in that coalition were invited to send between 7 and 25 troops each. The message from Paris was clear. France wants Europe to be able to defend itself more effectively, especially as Russia's war against Ukraine continues to reshape security planning across the continent. Macron has repeatedly argued that Europe should rely less heavily on the United States for its security. That idea has gained more attention as governments across Europe increase defense spending, rebuild weapons stocks, and debate how to support Ukraine while protecting their own populations. The challenge for leaders is balancing security needs with social needs. Rearmament can mean jobs in factories, engineering, logistics, and technology, but it also means public money that voters may want spent on housing, hospitals, climate adaptation, and schools. A lightly progressive view of security includes both: defending democratic societies from aggression while making sure working people are not asked to carry the costs without public benefit, oversight, and accountability. Bastille Day is rooted in the French Revolution and the promise of citizenship. This year's parade tied that history to a modern question: how Europe can protect itself while staying faithful to democratic values. France is also marking 10 years since the deadly Bastille Day truck attack in Nice. On July 14, 2016, after fireworks on the Promenade des Anglais, a man drove a 19-ton truck through crowds gathered along the seafront. 86 people were killed, including 15 children, and hundreds more were injured. Police shot and killed the driver. The attacker was identified as Mohamed Lahouayej Bouhlel, a 31-year-old Tunisian man with French residency. The Islamic State group claimed responsibility. The attack came less than a year after the November 2015 attacks in Paris, and it deepened a period of grief and fear in France. A decade later, the anniversary is not only about security policy, it is also about memory, trauma, and the long work of recovery. Families who lost children, parents, partners, and friends have lived with that absence for 10 years. Survivors have carried physical injuries, emotional wounds, and the difficulty of rebuilding ordinary routines after an act of mass violence. Commemorations can serve a public purpose when they honor victims without turning pain into division. France has had intense debates over terrorism, immigration, policing, and national identity. The anniversary in Nice is a reminder that the people most affected by violence are not abstractions in those debates. They are families, emergency workers, bystanders, doctors, and neighbors. Remembering them clearly means rejecting both indifference and hatred, and supporting the long-term care survivors need. In the United States, Democratic lawmakers in Maine are calling for an investigation after Immigration and Customs Enforcement agents shot and killed a motorist in Biddeford, south of Portland. Immigration advocates identified the victim as a 26-year-old man from Colombia. Senator Angus King said he was told by Homeland Security Secretary Markwayne Mullin that an agent fired in self-defense after a man tried to use his vehicle as a weapon. King also said the man who was killed was not the target of the warrant agents were serving. That detail has intensified calls for scrutiny. Reports from the scene described officers administering aid after the shooting and bullet holes in the windshield of the vehicle. The agents involved were not wearing body cameras, according to the reporting available at the time. The Department of Homeland Security had not commented at the time of the report. The case has drawn comparisons to the fatal ICE shooting of Lorenzo Salgado Araujo in Houston, where the person killed was also not the target of the warrant. Advocates say the pattern raises urgent questions about training, tactics, and accountability in immigration enforcement. For immigrant families, encounters with federal agents can be life-changing even when no one is hurt. When a person who is not the target of a warrant is killed, the need for transparent investigation becomes even stronger. Law enforcement officers also deserve clear rules and equipment that reduce risk. Body cameras, independent review, and timely public information are basic tools for public trust. The key question now is whether officials will provide a full account that the family and the community can rely on. Ukraine has joined 9 other nations in a new coalition aimed at protecting Europe from Russian ballistic missiles. The arrangement was announced at a gathering of world leaders in Paris, where President Volodymyr Zelensky sought more European support against Russian attacks. Zelensky said Ukraine does not currently have missiles capable of shooting down ballistic missiles. The new coalition is being described as an alternative to the U.S. Patriot missile system, which has been one of the most important tools for defending Ukrainian cities but remains limited in supply. Zelensky said the coalition could help deter further aggression from Russian President Vladimir Putin. The announcement comes as Putin has promised more strikes against Ukraine in response to recent drone attacks on Russian oil targets. That cycle of attack and retaliation keeps civilians in danger. For Ukrainian families, the issue is immediate: whether a missile can be stopped before it reaches an apartment building, a power station, a hospital, or a school. For workers, air defenses can be the difference between keeping the lights on and losing critical infrastructure during winter or after overnight attacks. The European focus is also significant. If the coalition succeeds, it could strengthen Ukraine while building a broader European shield against future missile threats. The practical questions are how quickly systems can be built or delivered, how they will be funded, and whether they can cover enough territory to matter. Ukraine's appeal remains consistent: more air defense, faster delivery, and long-term support that protects civilians as well as soldiers. More than 200 business, economics, and artificial intelligence experts have signed a statement warning that artificial intelligence could cause major economic disruption and large-scale job displacement if governments do not prepare. The statement was released Monday and includes 16 Nobel Prize winners in economics, along with AI researchers and other experts. The signatories say AI may become radically more powerful over the next decade. They warn that it could bring economic transformation greater than the Industrial Revolution, but over a much shorter period of time. At the same time, they acknowledge that AI could raise living standards if its benefits are broadly shared. That balance is important. The issue is not whether technology should stop. It is whether societies will shape it in ways that help people rather than simply replacing them. Workers in customer service, transportation, administration, media, software, education, finance, and many other fields are already wondering how their jobs may change. Some may see new tools that make work easier. Others may face layoffs, wage pressure, or surveillance in the workplace. The statement urges policymakers and economists to act now with safeguards and systems to ensure AI benefits society. That could include retraining, stronger unemployment protections, rules against abusive uses, public investment, and ways to share productivity gains with workers, rather than concentrating them only among a few companies and investors. The hopeful part is that disruption is not destiny. Governments, unions, businesses, universities, and communities still have choices. The warning from experts is that waiting until after mass displacement would be far more costly than planning now. In Japan, police in Osaka suspect that a deadly fire last August was caused by a restaurant worker who discarded a lit cigarette. The fire broke out in the Minami district, a busy commercial area near the Dotonbori River. 2 adjacent buildings burned, and 2 firefighters were killed while battling the blaze. Osaka Prefectural Police said surveillance evidence and other findings indicated that the fire spread from the south side of the first floor of one structure. Investigators believe a 35-year-old restaurant worker may have thrown a lit cigarette into a trash-filled ditch on the south side of the building. On Tuesday, police called for the man to be indicted on suspicion of gross negligence resulting in a fire. They did not disclose whether he admitted to the accusation. The case is a painful reminder that small acts of carelessness can have devastating consequences in dense commercial districts. Restaurant workers, firefighters, shop owners, and customers all share these spaces. Trash storage, smoking rules, alley maintenance, and fire prevention may seem routine, but they are part of public safety. The deaths of 2 firefighters also underline the risks emergency crews take when a preventable fire becomes a major blaze. Firefighters enter unstable buildings, breathe dangerous smoke, and make split-second decisions to protect strangers. Accountability in this case will be for the courts to decide, but the broader lesson is already clear. Prevention is a shared responsibility, and basic fire safety can save lives. Finally, Japanese researchers say a dormant herpes virus may be linked to fatigue and depression in some long COVID patients. The study involved a team from Tokyo GK University School of Medicine and examined blood samples from more than 150 patients. Nearly 70% tested positive for a protein called SIF1, which appears when a dormant herpes virus in the body is activated. Researchers are studying whether that viral activation contributes to symptoms such as fatigue and depression. In mice exposed to increased SF1 levels, researchers observed decreased brain function. The findings do not mean every case of long COVID has the same cause, and they do not yet provide a simple cure. But they may offer a clue for understanding why some people continue to feel ill long after the initial infection clears. The World Health Organization reports that roughly 6% of COVID-19 patients have prolonged symptoms after the acute phase. That represents many millions of people worldwide. For patients, long COVID can affect work, parenting, school, memory, mood, and the ability to exercise or complete daily tasks. Many have struggled to be believed, especially when standard tests appear normal. Research like this matters because it can move the conversation from uncertainty toward targeted diagnosis and treatment. It also reinforces the need for continued support for patients, workplace flexibility, and medical systems that take persistent symptoms seriously. The path is still early, but each credible clue gives doctors and patients more to work with. Follow for a daily world brief. Sources are linked in the description. That's the world as Minerva saw it.